What's going on, everybody? Lately I've had one thing on my mind, and that's sales. You see, just before this, I was going through the New York Times looking for their bestsellers list. And you know what I learned? There's a lot of bullshit in here. But you don't care about that. You're here for video games. So let's talk about something that interests both of us. The top 10 best-selling Nintendo Gamecube games in the United States. The Nintendo Gamecube is one of the most underrated consoles of all time. It didn't sell too well during its initial run, but it grew to be appreciated with time, and now it's a very popular console to collect games for. The Gamecube reminds me a lot of myself. Nobody cared about it in 2006, but now people want to suck its dick, and I find it hard to believe. Personally, I've always been a huge fan of this system, and I was lucky enough to get one at launch because of a deal with my dad where my brother and I got straight A's like a couple of fucking nerds. I still remember how it felt to see that startup screen for the first time. This was my first home console from Nintendo, and I loved everything about it. It never made sense to me as a kid why this system didn't get more attention, but I'm glad it's getting the respect that it deserves these days. I recently stumbled onto a tweet from Matt Piscatella. Matt works for the NPD Group, which is a market research firm based in New York. In his tweet, he listed the top 10 highest selling GameCube games in the US ranked by dollar sales. I found this to be interesting because the list varies slightly from the worldwide sales rankings. The list didn't put together sales figures, and it only included the order that they are ranked, so I decided to do the research myself and find out how many units these games sold in the United States. Today, I want to break down the top 10 best-selling GameCube games in the US to see what was successful on this system and share the numbers that I found. Number 10. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. The second title in the Paper Mario series was released on October 11th, 2004, and it went on to sell 1.23 million copies in North America and 1.91 million copies worldwide. This game is an RPG complete with turn-based battles, leveling systems, and other staples of the genre while remaining accessible to any audience. I remember being drawn to this art style as a young kid even though I wasn't too interested in RPGs at the time. The Thousand-Year Door is widely regarded as the best Paper Mario game, and the series strayed away from its roots after this one. It never made sense to me how Nintendo could perfect the series like this and never follow up with a traditional RPG in the same style. But luckily we'll always have this one to go back to, if you're willing to spend $95.
Want to buy some GameCube games?
Number 9. The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess was released on both the Wii and the GameCube within a few weeks of each other in 2006, and considering the total sales, it's safe to say this game would be higher on the list if it was exclusive to the GameCube. The numbers are a bit shaky on this one because I did come across some contradicting sources.
The numbers don't add up. The numbers don't add up!
The worldwide sales appear to come in at 1.59 million units, and with some sources reporting 1.32 million, it's safe to say that's where it would land for its North American sales, putting it right above Paper Mario and beneath the next entry in this list. Number 8. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was released on February 11th, 2002, and it went on to sell 1.44 million copies in the US and 1.73 million copies worldwide as of 2007. This game didn't sell as well outside of the US, and it doesn't make the top 10 list for worldwide sales. It also was a re-release of a Sega Dreamcast game, which makes these sales numbers a bit more impressive. I feel like this game was incredibly common with other GameCube owners, and I spent a ton of hours on this one. It's honestly one of my favorite games on the system because of all the memories I have with it. The multiplayer aspect was surprisingly good for its time too. I know the Adventure series hasn't held up perfectly over the years, but this is without a doubt the best way to play this game. Number 7. Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing was released on September 16th, 2002 and jump-started a worldwide phenomenon that is still popular today. It technically got its start on the Nintendo 64 with a title called Animal Forest, but that was only released in Japan, and the rest of the world got their first experience with this title instead. The leisurely gameplay mechanics were a breath of fresh air for casual gamers that just wanted to play something at their own pace. I've met countless people who only play Animal Crossing games and not much more. I like what Nintendo did here because they made a video game series that is accessible to nearly everyone, and they've reeled in a lot of consumers who normally wouldn't care for video games at all.
I love Tom Nook.
You know he's a landlord, right?
The last reported sales on Animal Crossing were in 2006 and listed at 1.3 million copies in the US sold and 2.27 million units worldwide. You may notice that those US numbers are lower than Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, but the sales figures that I found for Animal Crossing were gathered over a year earlier than Sonic, and the NPD group based their list on dollar sales. Animal Crossing could potentially make more money off of less units sold because of the prices that Nintendo keeps their first-party titles at, and it possibly sold more units than Sonic during the year gap where the sales were reported. Number 6. Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime is one of Nintendo's most critically acclaimed games, and it took the Metroid series from 2D to 3D after an 8-year hiatus where they skipped the N64 entirely. I believe this was a smart choice for Nintendo because I don't think the N64 could have pulled off anything close to this game, and it made Metroid's jump to 3D shockingly good. We didn't have to deal with the blurry textures and blocky character models that plagued some of those N64 games. As much as I love that system, the Gamecube was just so much smoother with its visuals. The Metroid series was essentially dropped into the third dimension while nearing perfection. I'll admit that the controls are a bit dated, but the game is built around them, and it flows very well once you get comfortable. Metroid Prime sold 1.49 million copies in the US and 2.84 million worldwide, giving it a very deserving spot on this list.
Alright, for today's lesson, I want you to sell me this game. I heard there's a talking fox in this one.
Number 5. Luigi's Mansion. When my family purchased the Gamecube in 2001, there were 2 games that we bought with it: Luigi's Mansion and Tarzan Untamed. I absolutely loved Luigi's Mansion from the first moment that I played it. This was actually my first experience with a 3D Mario game, and he wasn't even there. This game created an eerie atmosphere that was unexpected from the Mario series, and it worked incredibly well. As I grew older and I played survival horror games, I realized that Luigi's Mansion took a lot of inspiration from the first Resident Evil and that game's mansion. Both games unfold as a puzzle as you make your way through the mansions. You encounter enemies, whether ghosts or zombies, and you use your weapons, whether vacuums or guns. The weapons upgrade through the game as you solve puzzles and defeat bosses to receive keys that unlock new sections of the property. A lot of us were introduced to survival horror through Luigi's Mansion, and we didn't even know it. This title sold 2.19 million units in the United States and 3.3 million units worldwide. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Welcome to GameStop. Go fuck yourself.
Hi, do you have any copies of Legend of Zelda: The Dog Walker?
Wind Waker was a bit of a gamble for Nintendo. They were losing the battle to Sony and Microsoft during this generation, and a lot of people were associating the GameCube with a younger audience. The Wind Waker seemed to lean into this with a cartoonish art style, but the game really shouldn't be judged on its surface alone. It's actually one of the best titles in the series, and it doesn't hold back at all. The cel-shaded graphics hold up well, and I think this art style turned out to be a great choice in retrospect because it makes this title more distinct than any other game in the series. It went on to sell 4.6 million copies worldwide, but there doesn't seem to be an official number of US sales reported. We can take its placement on this list and assume that it sold somewhere between 2.2 and 2.5 million units in the United States. Number 3. Super Mario Sunshine. Super Mario Sunshine is the most unconventional mainline 3D Mario game. At the time of its release, some players criticized the gameplay because it relies heavily on a water-powered backpack, while most people were looking for a genuine sequel to Super Mario 64. Now that time has passed, we've seen a ton of new 3D Mario games, and since we have more choices for games to play, I think we can all appreciate this one a bit more now. It still sold fairly well in the system despite the slight criticism, coming in at 2.5 million units sold in the US and 6.28 million units sold worldwide.
Liquid Death, the water that can murder your thirst. This episode is not brought to you by Liquid Death, but it'd be pretty cool if it was.
Number 2. Mario Kart Double Dash. Mario Kart Double Dash is similar to Super Mario Sunshine in the way that it's the most unconventional game in its series. The game revolves around having two characters in your kart that you can switch between on the fly. Certain items are character specific, and you can create a team that has the best suited abilities for your style of racing. There's not too much of a difference beyond this, but it still makes for an interesting gimmick to play around with. Mario Kart is a crowd pleaser on any system, so it's really no surprise that it takes the number 2 spot on this list. It went on to sell 3.8 million copies in the US and 6.96 million copies worldwide. Number 1. Super Smash Bros. Melee. Super Smash Bros. Melee is my favorite game in the Smash Bros. Series, and it's because I spent the most time with this one. They polished up the gameplay from the N64 title and gave us a densely packed game with a ton of unlockables. I remember grinding for the higher level characters like Mewtwo, and I loved seeing the complete roster when I finished. The trophy system in this game plays a big part in my love for the history of Nintendo. There's a seemingly endless amount of these to collect by playing the game, and each one provides history behind the character or item that it represents. I can understand why this game takes the number 1 spot on this list, because it felt like almost everyone had this game if they owned a Gamecube. It was a perfect multiplayer game for the system, and it was a staple at any birthday party in 2003. Melee went on to sell 4.06 million copies in the US and 7.41 million copies worldwide, making it the highest selling GameCube game of all time.
Yeah.
So that's going to be it for today, everyone. Were you surprised with the list, or was it what you expected? I think this list is pretty consistent with what I saw everyone playing during this era. One thing I did find interesting was that 2 Mario Party games are on the worldwide sales list, but neither of them made it to the US list. Aside from that, everything seems to be what I would have predicted. I like how the GameCube is getting respect by video game collectors these days. It really was a powerful system for its time, and there's a number of exclusives that make it worth owning. If you have any memories with certain games on this system, then leave a comment and tell me about them. I appreciate everyone listening and watching this, and I'll talk to you later.